This is preparing to live stream. Okay.
Got the messages.
Okay. So, let's see. Oh, I'm pretty sure that's live streaming right now. I gotta change out my account to double check. But we can get started. So Mike, take us away.
Okay, just going to give a pause here, right, for editing. Hello, welcome everyone again to another episode of AI Insights. We're having yet another discussion with Steven Bowman, software guru, and also AI guru, as he's been doing research and counseling clients on how to deal with AI. Today's topic is the opposite of what you've been hearing, right? Most people have been hearing AI is a threat, right? It's going to take over the world, or it's going to do this or that. But we're going to be talking about opportunities with AI, both potentially from a personal and a business perspective. So as he's going to talk about, the tagline here is put your buckets out because it could be raining money, depending on what you're doing with AI. Now, before we get started, I'll say one thing. In our last session, we talked about bots and the different kinds of bots and manager bots versus task bots and so on. It caused me to think of something about how language is going to change in the age of AI because, people, particularly if they're a certain level or status seekers or whatever, that phrase about I'll have my people call your people. It's going to change to I'll have my bots call your bots.
We're already there.
Right there.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, my bots talk to your bots. Okay. All
It's
right. So,
interesting. Let's start there. Let's
yeah,
start
go
there
ahead.
for a second. So I've been having this conversation with a mutual friend of ours who's in the know when it comes to AI, a published author on AI,
Right.
and just somebody who's really in the know. They're kind of bleeding edge, and we're talking about the future of SEO. We're talking about the future of search and why a bot on your website makes a lot of sense when it comes to something as simple as search. And we touched on this just a little bit, but when you said have your bot talk to my bot, that's realistically, there is a very clear path to that being the future of search and SEO, where whomever wins the search engine wars or the AI wars, if you will, right? Maybe that's OpenAI, maybe that's Anthropic, maybe that's ChatGPT. The future of a search result is going to look an awful lot like what you see in a ChatGPT conversation these days, where you're going to ask it a question and it's going to bring you back what it thinks you ask, a bunch of understanding of that information, and some level of results that probably won't be 10 links on a page, right? And the way that they found that information is probably not going to be they went and scraped your website. It's going to be their bot spoke to your bot. Their search bot spoke to your website bot, gathered all of the information that it needed, and it can have contextual conversation between bots to make sure that the nuance that you're asking for in your search matches the nuance of what you offer as per your bot or on your website. So that I don't think it sounds funny, but it's really that's the future of
Yeah.
search.
So let's just go a little bit more on that just for a moment. So for those of you who don't know, SEO, search engine optimization, is a term used to about how to tune a website or a location on the internet so it's easier to find from a search engine perspective, which then translates to being easier to find by people searching because there's lots of websites out there. How many would you estimate now? I mean, how many hundreds of millions? I mean, where are we now in the number of unique URLs or
Unique URLs on the internet? Billions.
yeah, yeah, I mean, because all the two-letter names are pretty much
Yeah.
gone, three-letter, four-letter, five-letter, six-letter, right? I mean, so what we're talking about here, hundreds of millions would be probably a way underestimate, right? Yeah,
Yep.
it's in the billions, right? So the challenge here is that if you have a product or service, or you just have a message, or maybe you've got an association or a group and you want to be found by someone looking for something like what you offer, or want to join a group like you have, they're going to use either, Google or, any of the other engines, Brave, whatever, right? Firefox, and they're going to type a question in or type a search term. And the whole idea of search engine optimization SEO was to help your site be found among all that stuff.
Yep.
Now, what you just said, though, is that, okay, because the search engines are now changing to bots, I think we talked about this in one of the prior sessions, you can already see in some web browsers at the top, you're getting a summary along with some links that it got the information from. So the bot is already there. And what I think you said is that, now the opportunity might be from a search engine optimization perspective for whatever you're trying to put out there is to do, instead of just tinkering with the wording or the links on the website and all the other, arcane stuff that SEO, it comes and goes over the years, right? Depending on what the engines are looking for, is now maybe a bot that's going to be there and maybe just tuned for search engines, right? It's there only for the search engines rather than customer service, and say, hey, here I am. Is that what you're
Absolutely.
saying?
Absolutely, I do. So if we think about, right, I'm sure you've done it too. I do it, right? We've learned little tricks and hacks and ways to put our words together in our Google searches to get the best possible results, right? We've learned how to kind of we don't type a contextual question into Google and get a very good answer. We have to say, plumber, Ann Arbor, after hours, 2 a.m. to try to hack the search engine to find that specific result that we're looking for. And the beauty of generative AI is that it's contextual. So we can ask it a question and it simulates understanding what we're asking and then provides us results back based on that context. So that's another reason why I think the future of search is really bot driven, AI bot driven, rather than the way we're doing it now, right? Just kind of scraping and
Yeah.
looking for
I
somebody who
mean,
can hack a page and do that kind of
I
stuff.
think that all those hacks that you talked about, or, tips and tricks about how to use search engines and terms, that's already somewhat broken because the way I used to search with those terms doesn't produce good results anymore, right? It's kind of like sitting on the fence, they're kind of changing to the AI bot and the engine, but it's actually harder at the moment to use a traditional search engine to find something, until we get past this stuff. Because I can't find anything anymore. It's gotten even worse. So, all right, well, that's interesting. So that is one opportunity we've already covered there, unintentionally on my part,
Sure,
but well,
sure.
I have my bot talk to your bot, all right? Or
Yeah.
my bots talk to your bots. And that launched into how, from a business or service or association or whatever perspective, that's the next wave in making sure you can be found. All right, what other kind of opportunities out there catch the cash rain, put the buckets out?
So we'll definitely I'll put together a picture for this. So if anybody who's listening or a part of this right now is familiar with Perry Marshall, he's got a tactical triangle that he puts out there associated with business. You've got one side of the or one angle on the one corner of the triangle is revenue, one is traffic, and one is I don't even remember, interest.
Conversion, right? So
Thank you.
you get the traffic, it is conversion, which is sales. So you can think about traffic as kind of like marketing.
Yep.
Conversion, one side is sales, and then
Economics.
the economic side, the bottom side is really about then delivery and, all the payment, or, if there is payment, all that sort of stuff. So,
Thank you. Yep. So if I were to put together a tactical triangle associated with AI, it would be more for implementation, and the corners would be savings, revenue or earnings, and stability. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity with AI right now. You'll see it in the news. There's all this volatility. And we'll talk, maybe hopefully we've got time to talk about it later. I saw an Inc. article yesterday that said it quizzed a bunch of Fortune 500 executives, and almost 70% of those executives saw AI as a threat, not as an opportunity, which is a little scary to me. And it turns out when you dig a little bit deeper, that the threat that they see is because they think their competitors are going to use it and take some of their market share, which is an interesting spin on that.
Well, that's what we've said for individuals in the past, right? I mean, another colleague, I have, can't remember if she brought it up first or somebody else did, but the main idea is that, you don't currently, I mean, in the future, maybe, currently most people, unless you're just answering phones, don't have much to worry about AI taking your job, right? It's another human using AI to leverage their work to
Yes.
be better. And so what they're saying is on the business or organizational standpoint, that's what they're worried about. The threat is really from other organizations using AI, which is opposite because you normally think about, AI, we think of like Godzilla or something eating cities. I don't know, it's kind of the direct threat, the Skynet or
Sure.
sort of Terminator kind of stuff happening. No, but right now, that really is the thing. And the interesting thing to me is that you just talked about, the income or revenue. It talked about the savings that can
Yep.
increase profits, and then there's the operational stuff, which actually
Yes.
feeds into the savings and the profits as well. But you think about this, the thing that's interesting to me about what you said is that they thought about the threat first from outside rather than about how they could make changes inside,
Yep.
because fundamentally, most of them probably don't want to change their businesses,
Sure.
right? It's a threat because they have to change, that it may have to change, right?
Right.
And so I've got to do something different than I'm doing now, so they're perceiving it as a threat. Whereas if we turn that on its head, what you're saying is don't look at it that way. I mean, you do have to take that into account, but
Sure.
let's look first at how you can leverage it and then see how you stand against the other businesses, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Right. So we talked a little bit previously. There's tons of opportunities to save money for your business by using AI. If you haven't gone through the exercise of going to your favorite AI platform, OpenAI, Claude, whomever it is, whatever your favorite vendor is, telling them a bunch of information about your business, giving them your URL, and saying, can you help me come up with ways that I can save money in my business by using AI? Just present the question just like that and have a little brainstorming back and forth with AI. I recommend don't hang up now. As soon as we're done with our podcast, go ahead and do that. Have that conversation. Some of the stuff you'll look at it and you go, wow, that's really generic and it doesn't make, anybody, you could say that to anybody. It might be true. As you start to hone your questions and hone that conversation, I guarantee you there's going to be a zinger or two in there that you haven't thought of. There are real immediate savings opportunities with AI. We'll say that over and over again. We'll give tons of examples. Two that just come off the top of my head. You mentioned it earlier. If you're a receptionist, if you've got a receptionist, there's platforms out there that allow you to completely personalize and customize for your business. And I'm going to say under $100 a month. I mean, that's substantial right then and there. You
Mhm.
want a human being? That's fine. We can have your receptionist do other things. We can have the AI receptionist hand off to your receptionist and have your receptionist do higher duties, maybe executive assistant or other things. I'm not a proponent to say, hey, fire your whole staff. No, this is about augmentation. This isn't about elimination. But just know that there are real easy examples. I say easy, but there are real relatively painless examples of how to implement AI into your business and save thousands today. Another good example are lead gen. I talk to a lot of people who rely on third parties to deliver them leads. A lot of times they're spending $7,500 a lead. and they find that a fair number of their leads are unqualified. Put a bot on your website that asks 5 questions and makes a decision. Does this person get a lead magnet or does this person get an appointment? And they're unlimited. All you have to do is drive traffic to that site. There's lots of strategy there, but saving the one corner of that triangle, savings and AI, literally, that's why I say that we call this put out your buckets. There are opportunities falling from the sky of ways to save money using AI right now today. Sorry, Mike, were you thinking
No,
something?
I was just going to, 2 comments. One is that, we're talking about this, and then we'll go back to our touch point, is that being human will be even more important in the future in the age of AI. So
Absolutely.
it's incumbent as part of making these decisions on every business leader to decide, okay, based on our mission, our values, our vision, how we make money, what's our branding, which route are we going to go here? Some businesses, and particularly some that are, maybe higher revenue or higher margin, especially, but any of them that pride themselves on having human beings or human touch, well, you're going to figure out how to augment those so it doesn't disrupt your branding, right? So
Yeah,
that's the
sure.
first thing I'd say is, just be cognizant of how you want to come across in the marketplace and how all that fits, and then figure out the savings accordingly. And the second comment has to go back to when you said if you do the query and you send them the website and all that stuff, and then say, hey, what are some opportunities for AI? There's an interesting way of thinking about that, because some of them, you might say, okay, that looks just kind of the same guidance I'd give to anybody. And then you might, as you dig deeper, refine the prompts, find things that are specific to your business. Well, it's a both and rather than either or. If you decide not to address those fundamental things, and everybody else is doing those kind of fundamental or generic things, then that could be a hole in your armor that somebody's going to, shoot you through, because you're leaving money on the table, or, you're doing things that really aren't. That's kind of a keeping up with the Joneses kind of deal, right? It doesn't help me differentiate, it doesn't help me get ahead, but it keeps me from falling behind. On the other hand, all those gems that you're talking about, or the things that pop out at you, that are distinct to the business, and you go like, wow, that could really, amplify, magnify, whatever you want to call it, to what we're doing. That's the differentiation use of AI. So there's really 2 sides of the savings coins, right? One is
Sure.
let's keep up, do the fundamentals right, kind of best practices. But as I always say, best practices don't differentiate you. They just keep you up, right, to state of the art in a sense, right? And you got to figure out what differentiates you beyond that. So I just wanted to add that extra to what you're saying, because it's a both and rather than either or.
It's a great point. It's an and. Um, so the next corner of that triangle is really make money. We talked a little bit about this. There's tons of it out there that's got my face stamped on it, but I'll give you a couple examples real fast. You can use AI to make money in new ways, in different ways. Again, if you know Planet Perry, then you probably know John McGee. John McGee and I work together. He's a dynamite world-class copywriter, and he's got a defined system for the way that he goes about generating a unique selling proposition or a definitive selling proposition with a client. It's an interview style process. He asks 15 or 20 questions. He then rates them. And then we kind of smash the information that he got together from his interview and out produces a DSP. And he's really, really, really dynamite good at what he does. And John charges for his services. So you book an appointment with John, and right now he's limited to how many appointments he wants to take a month, a
Right.
day, whatever it is, right? So we took his process and implemented it into an AI chatbot. That chatbot now leads you through the interview process. And at the end of the process, it amalgamates all of the data, produces a candidate USP, and then allows you to go back and forth to tweak it to your output. Well, John doesn't have to be there for it. His intellectual property, his clearly defined, articulated process is there, but John himself isn't there. And he's no longer limited to how many appointments he wants to take and be there personally. Now, John now has an upsell to be there in person, but he's now booking appointments for people to build their own DSP, USP on a session with his bot that he doesn't have to be a part of. That's more revenue into his company. That's a new way to make money. And the quality of the output is absolutely dynamite. I mean, we tested it. We did lots of work on it to tweak it. But people, the people who are taking those sessions with the bot are almost, I dare say almost, as thrilled as when they get to hang out with John. And it's almost because John's, if you know John, John's a wonderful guy. His insight is great, and sometimes he helps peel words out of us that we don't necessarily know. But it's just another example of how can you potentially scale your business, especially if you're a small solopreneur and you're kind of trading time for money, if you will. How do you do that? Well, if you've got something clearly defined, we can use a bot to do that. And
Yeah,
that's
this
just
is a great
solopreneur.
example. I just, before you go further on it, just to home in on that, because that is the lid or the constraint for most businesses, even large businesses. Because if I look at, even if I take the top tier consulting firms or the largest, right? If you take McKinsey or BCG or any of the others, they've got a process,
Yeah,
but it also depends to some degree on the people doing it. And the top people in those firms, right, have a level of experience and expertise in dealing with the situation. What you just said, whether it's them at the top level or anybody down below, if you're limited because what service you're providing is currently dependent upon you and your, expertise, if you can make that into an algorithm or a process, and I don't want to get into what that means, but just basically if you can make it clear about the steps and what needs to happen and how to combine all that, sufficiently clear, right? It doesn't have to be perfect. Then what you just said, I'll use another word for it, is that the AI bot allows you to clone yourself as many times as you need to
sure,
serve clients.
sure. So there's a lot of people might get not scared, but a lot of people might have reservations about that. And the good news is that if you do have reservations about cloning yourself, we don't have to. We can augment. It doesn't have to be fully automated, which means a human being isn't involved at all, but it can be augmented, meaning there can be steps that AI handles, but there can still be human interaction with it. There can still be review, there can still be handoff, there can still be conversation. And that human conversation can be added as context, recorded, and added to the process to enhance it even further. So John, in his example, could interview somebody and then take the transcript of that interview and add it to his bot to enhance the output even further. That's a very realistic possibility. And another great example of it can be and instead of or. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. And
So
there's all kinds of um started to say permutations, but no, it sounds too mathy, I mean, there's all sorts of variations, to this because, maybe John has it for you, again, using John's example of doing an interview, maybe he has the bot do the initial interview and there's possibilities, but upon he does the review, the human
sure,
review, because there could be something you can't, right now because AI is limited in its intelligence capability, right? It has to be patterns, it has to be things that we can generally tell it what to do in what circumstance. There may be some things or exceptions, that there's always exceptions, right? And John may notice those and say, oh, well, let's go back to this question. I noticed you said this, right? Because it cued, piqued something in his head.
yep,
And now it's going to be that much better, but he still didn't have to do the time and going through the initial and working with the person and getting the initial information, right? And you can still augment beyond that. So there's all
absolutely.
sorts of variations. It all depends on the product and service that you're providing
Product, service, and comfort level, right?
and comfort level, right? And
As
comfort
soon
level
as
of your
John,
customers.
right, exactly. John and his clients, exactly, 100%. Excellent, excellent. We've got more examples of, if you're looking for more examples of how to use AI to make money in your existing business. Number one, start with a conversation with ChatGPT. Number two, please, reach out to me. Those are things that I absolutely love talking about. And I'm an idea guy to boot. So definitely got plenty more examples that we'll share over time on that one.
Yeah, so I just want to hit on one more here because you said there were three sides. One is revenue, basically money coming in, savings of what the cost is to provide the service or product.
Yep.
And then there was the stability. And that's an interesting one. So just briefly, how can it add stability?
I'll give you, thank you. Excellent segue. I'll give you a perfect example in my experience. And I can't strongly recommend this enough. So one of the most painful things I've experienced in my career as a software developer is documentation. I haven't met a single developer who thinks to themselves, who has ever said, I've never once heard the phrase, man, as soon as I'm done writing the code, I can't wait to write the documentation on it. Of course not, right? So if we think about documentation of software, let's twist that ever so slightly and put it back on the business as a whole, because not everybody writes software. Let's call it standard operating procedures. And in my experience, standard operating procedures in the corporate world generally look like there's a book or a binder somewhere, or there's like a laminated piece of paper that's pinned onto somebody's cubicle, and Sally's got part of it, and Don's got the rest of it, and it was written a couple of years ago, and that doesn't include that little new piece of software we just put in, and painful to upkeep, painful to keep relevant, painful for some people to use it. Some people don't even know that there's a standard operating procedure,
Right,
document, or
that's
they
even
don't
worse
even
in most
know,
days,
right?
right?
You learn by doing, right? So you're thrown into the pit, and this is how we do it. You hear somebody talk, you go through it, you build, right? You may miss steps, you may not. Get yourself an AI assistant. Let the AI assistant interview you. By the way, we've got these. Have the AI assistant interview you. Please tell me about your process. Where does it start? Step one, step two. It doesn't matter how many steps it is. Record all of that information, hand it back to the bot, the AI bot, the assistant. And whenever anybody, make it publicly available, whenever anybody has a question of, hey, listen, Mr. Bot, I'm in the middle of doing this and I'm stuck. What do I do next? The bot's going to know if it was given the information to be trained on. It's going to be able to tell you what step 8, what step 11, what step 47 is in order based on what it was given and trained. Not only that, here's the kicker. Once you do that one time, because I've been a part of it. I'm sure almost everybody has, whether it's SOPs or whether it's documentation for software, whatever it is. You write the product one time. It's, we're not going to do that again. We're going to make sure it's in the budget to give you guys time to actually write the documentations. Yay!
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
Right? It's always it's so funny. I've got redheads too, so bear with me on this one, but it's the redheaded stepchild of the software development world. Everybody says it's important. We always run out of money. It's one of the things that gets skipped or forgotten or ignored. So when we do it, sometimes we do it right in the process. That way we don't miss it because it's very important. Meaning we're building that documentation as the software is being built. We're building that SOP as we're defining the process, which is great. Things change immediately. Before the first build goes out, we're already making changes. Before, we've got our 10th customer, we're making changes to the process. So we can bake in an iterative process by using a bot where you say, hey, what's the standard operating procedure for business process A? And it'll tell you, here's all the steps. And you can say to the bot, hey, step 7 doesn't make any sense. This is what it should be. If you have authority, it can change it right there on the fly. If you don't have authority, we can build a little workflow that takes your recommendations on what step 7 should be sends it to your boss, gives them an alert. The boss can then approve, decline, or edit the instructions before they're put back into the bot. And then it's done, immediately done. Time to market is increased. The ability to actually make changes is increased. It's always in the same place. Something as simple as knowing I forgot what I'm supposed to do next, but I've got a resource that can tell me and it can be followed is a huge step forward in stability for your business, because volatility in the world, right? I've talked to a lot of people lately. A lot of people are having trouble hiring for roles or keeping people around long enough. Having documentation in some form or fashion, in this case, a conversation with a piece of software, a bot, an AI bot, to let a new hire know what they're supposed to do or where they got lost or what went wrong could be invaluable, especially if you're a small team and everybody's working. Uh, that one sticks out head and shoulders from a stability standpoint for me.
Yeah, and just slight correction, I know you're getting going there with your points. It's time to market is decreased, not increased, right?
Yes,
So,
yes,
but I think there's another dimension to this, because if, as I'm doing the work, if I've got something that's doing the documentation as an aid right next to me, or making the changes, or even recommending them,
yep,
one of the downstream or later problems we have is not just keeping the internal documentation up to date, it's keeping the user or customer documentation up to date. The frequently asked questions, the
absolutely.
installation guide, how do you set it up, right? All those things. So not only can you accumulate questions that people have from the outside and have the bot, or bots incorporate that quickly, but it's also the same sort of thing. If I make a change to this product or service, not just software, but to this product or service,
Yeah,
I have some way of, capturing or triggering something, then I'm going to automatically update what the customer sees too. And it's a big boon to them because it saves them time and money and getting up to speed, which means their satisfaction increases. I think there's this thing from a stability perspective that's a little more subtle sometimes, but the fact that the what you just mentioned about, if we get into, when we first start a business, maybe we don't have the process down right, we get it, we refine it over time, we got our process. But if it's in people's heads, or if it's mostly in people's heads, then my business is in great danger of one or
absolutely.
more of those people leaving, because I don't have the process, the business, in a sense, if I'm the owner, right? But the business doesn't have the documented and refined process in a form that's transmittable and usable by other people, right? So if those people walk out the door, you mentioned, people coming and going, hiring, right? I got a new person walk in the door. Well, how am I going to train it? Well, I got to start over, right? But I'm going to commit a lot of the same trial and error. I don't have something to start with for the training. And so the more that we can keep that standard operating process, both standard, right? Meaning it's up to date, and also that I've got ability to communicate it. That's a huge stability deal, particularly in small to medium-sized businesses where you don't have, the funding to have somebody sit down and constantly do documentation updates and other stuff. Yeah, you won't capture everything with a bot, but you can get a lot of it, or augment, to help make it a lot easier. I mean, to me, that's always on the stability side. That's just a huge deal, right? You can kill your business if you lose the one person who knows it all, or is the single point of failure in how stuff is done.
Sure. Agreed. Agreed. Another good example along those same lines, and we don't have to go too far down the rabbit hole because this is probably big enough to be its own session, no kidding, is employee onboarding. Employee onboarding is all over the map in a lot of places. Sure, they've got a document or they've got a process. Maybe it's up to date, maybe it's not. You have to take these 27 steps in order. That's all event driven from a bot that can guide you through that entire process.
Yeah, if it's even on the map. So, there's some places, great, go over there, start working or go work with this guy, right? I mean, that's it, right? You get on, you do whatever minimum government paperwork you got, and then, you turn you loose, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Another good example of using AI to help stabilize your business. And I think that's going to be really, really important here. And then it's really important now, and people are overlooking it. But I think it's going to become more important in the future because there's a fair amount of volatility in the world. And it's hard to know how that's going to affect us, how that's going to affect our business, economically, all of it. There's some volatility in the world.
Okay, well, let's stay on that for a minute. Normally, our second segment is News of the Week. We actually already covered that earlier when you mentioned the Inc. article, right? Because that was going to be a part of what we're talking about. So I was asking you, the third part is usually Q&A. In this case, I'm going to use my question from the audience because you had mentioned a a particular point of view about volatility in the world coming from the folks at Palantir, which is a very large, very data, analysis oriented organization. I started to ask you a question about it, and I thought, oh, wait, let's talk about this. So tell me about that, and why did that strike you? What is it about volatility that interested you in that article?
So if you're not familiar, go any Lord of the Rings geeks out there, yeah, pick me. What's a Palantir, right? It's the lost seeing stone that got picked up and Sauron was able to see. Okay. If you know what I'm talking about, yay, high five. In our world, outside of Middle Earth, right back here on regular Earth, Palantir is, as you were describing, they're a big data analytics company. They use a lot of AI. And one of the services that they offer that isn't necessarily publicly spoken about very much is they use technology to analyze images from satellites. I was working with somebody a couple of years ago. They had this really cool real estate game and idea in their head, and that's how I became much more familiar with Palantir and what they offer. But Alex Karp, and if you don't know who he is, if you Google him or whatever, you'll see a picture of him and you go, oh, I know that guy, because very distinctive look. Alex Karp was just interviewed, and during that interview, he talked about volatility in the world, and one of the ways that he's helping the US government in their thinking on how to deal with that volatility through their technology. And one of the things that he said struck me very deeply in the way that he suggested that the US government is right now identifying strategies to fight a war on three fronts. That means Russia, China, and Iran. And he's essentially talking about World War III. And he used a statement that caught my attention. And that was a moral discrepancy in using nuclear arms. That is a quote from Alex Karp. You can Google it.
Okay, you're going to have to explain that one because I could think of all sorts of things. What did he mean?
So what I interpreted by the interview and his statement is that there are national powers, right? There's other countries on the planet who either have nuclear weapons or are on the cusp of acquiring nuclear weapons and that technology, and that they have a different moral compass associated with when and where to use them or not. Meaning, there's other people who are probably right. Obviously, the U.S. has, right. We're the only ones to ever use it. I know that there's lots of regret and everything like that. War is evil, and there's a history there. We've committed to not do that again. There's documents that countries have signed that commit to not use nuclear weapons. Not everybody who has nuclear weapons is on that agreement, right? Not everybody has agreed to not use them if they get that capability. And I think what Alex is talking about is he's talking about there's strategies and there's information, there's data, there's AI, there's things that they're helping governments around the world with to use their technology to help avoid those threats, to keep those threats at bay, because what he's suggesting quite openly is that there are other powers that are going to get desperate here in the next few years and potentially might wave one of those around or drop one.
Okay, well, this could be a longer conversation because there's all sorts of stuff.
That's volatility.
Yeah, that's a little bit more voluntarily than I was thinking we were going to be talking about.
Yeah, no, it gets really deep and scary fast. And again, this is another one of those things where, in my opinion, right, geopolitics and if you're not familiar with BRICS currency and what the rest of the world is trying, or some nations of the rest of the world are trying to do to generate their own currency, potentially destabilize the dollar, write debt in a different currency than US dollars. There's a lot of volatility in the world, and it's hard to know exactly where we're going to land, which is why and by the way, I'm not a doomsday guy in any way, shape, or form. I believe in capitalism. I believe in America. I've been an entrepreneur a long time. I'm so grateful and appreciative for all of the things that I have in my life, particularly growing up here in America. I'm a very proud American. I deal with a lot of people from around the globe on a daily basis. We have these very candid conversations about it. We're not perfect, but it's still a great place to be. A wonderful nation. It's still hard to know what level of effect any of the decisions that are happening outside of us are going to have on us, which is why I go back to it's raining. Put your buckets out. Quite literally, there's opportunity to save money, to make money, to find new ways to make money, to stabilize your business in the event that there is some kind of financial disruption in the next few years. Too many people, I think, are waiting on the sideline. Oh, it's no big deal, or it's going to be less than the dot-com boom, or we were talking about it a little bit earlier, right? I've got a unique perspective, and Mike, you probably, I go further back than me. I cut my teeth in the dot-com boom. So in '99, I started working at a technology company, and I watched them get $75 million worth of funding and go broke 3 years later.
And spend 80, right? Or something.
No kidding, right? I mean, these are the things that happen. We watch these successes and failures and all of this money float around. And I think maybe a lot of people are thinking like, well, I'm not going to do that. Well, if you've got $75 million to give to another, to send on a venture fund, then you've got a different level of volatility in your life. Taking the first couple of steps with AI, right? Getting a bot on your website, using a bot to streamline some processes, maybe writing a standard operating procedure for your business. These are not gargantuan expenses. We're not, this isn't an outrageous amount of time, effort, or money to take those steps now to help ensure those baby steps that you can grow on in the future by using AI now. They put you way ahead of the folks who are sitting on the sidelines saying, hey, I wonder how this technology thing is going to work out. I'm not sure. I can tell you how it's going to work out. I don't know the exact nuance, but we're not getting the toothpaste back in that tube, right? The genie's out of the bottle. It's not going backward from here. Look for the big guys. You'll see the big guys. So when I say big guys, I mean companies like Microsoft, companies like IBM, companies like Oracle. These guys are using and implementing more and more and more AI in their businesses, in their services, in their offerings for a reason. They see the capability, they see the savings, they see the revenue opportunity. If anything, if I can encourage you to do anything, it's take a look at what they're doing and ask yourself, how could I mimic some of that in my business?
Okay, great note to close on since we were talking about opportunities today. I will say that earlier when you made note about you had lots of information out there about, making money with your picture on it. I put those two phrases together and I was thinking, oh, there's a cryptocurrency, the Steven Bowman cryptocurrency out there. So
Oh, I love it. You know what? I'm gonna go to Dolly when we're done here, and I'm
And
gonna
make
figure
one.
out how to get a new currency with my picture on it. We'll see. Well, that's gonna turn out funny. We'll bring it in next week. That'll be great.
Okay, all right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Stephen. Another
Yep.
interesting session, and we'll see you next time. Any questions, send them in the interim, and have a great time
Thanks,
with
everybody.
implementing all these ideas. Bye.
Yes, yes. Ciao. All right.